Alright, so let's clean up some of these areas here. This side of the head. And I'm just trying to find pore detail that's similar, so I can just kind of just rough this in, like so. Now this process is pretty straightforward, as you can see. I'm just systematically going through and projecting everything. So we're not really utilizing the new functions of Mari 2.0. However, we will when we do the color maps. Right now we're just trying to get the fine disp going. So let's do the same thing to this side. Kind of just rough it in. Like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Ortho UV, and to get the upper eye area, I'm just going to lay down the paint in here, since it's a very curved area and I know my UVs are done pretty well. I can really just lay this down and be confident that it's going to blend nicely, like so. There we go. You may notice that the pores are slightly smaller in scale, and I'm okay with that because we want to make sure that if we get really close to the eye, some of that holds up. And we can always fade in and out some of this stuff. So a lot of it's a little kind of just playing with the textures, seeing how they all work, and then finding patches of pores that you do like and fading them in. I'm actually going to change to this brush here. Again, it's a hard edge. It's got a nice noise to it. Go back to this nose. Kind of rough that in there, like so. That'll work for me. Let's go to the other side of the head. Do the same thing to that upper eyelid. And let's drop some detail in there. Again, not too worried about what's going on. Just want to make sure we get even coverage, because then we can finesse stuff later. Just want to make sure that I'm covering all my bases. I'm not getting any repeatable stuff going on here. There we go. And again, going back to the ortho and the nose, pulling some of that back in. Felt a little bit stretched. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the UVs, and I could have done this earlier, but I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to lock selected these eyes so I don't paint on them. In fact, I'm going to you could do this. What I want to do is lock those so I don't paint on them, but ultimately if I say I didn't lock those, if I went here and unlocked all and accidentally did paint on them, afterwards I could just select them, fill them with gray, patches, fill, gray, and then I'll get back to it. So 2 different ways you can do it. So for now I like locking it. Now let's get underneath this eye. Get some detail going there. I'm going to get this noisy brush. Get some of that in there. Like so. There we go. I'm going to try to clean this up a bit. Get a little bit more of a flow going on. Just in this area. And then getting a little bit of detail in there. And already we're getting some really nice, interesting details. And I did mention before how we're going to use the ZBrush disp as a guide, but I'm not going to do that just yet. And quite frankly, a lot of these fine wrinkles aren't directional, and they're not a lot of fine crow's feet or anything, so I'm not too worried about it. I think a lot of this stuff is going to play nicely regardless, but we will check it eventually. I'm actually looking at this now. This crease here is a little low on the face. So I'm going to fix that. Just reproject it up a bit higher. There. Feels a bit better. And let's go to this side of the face. Lay this down. With a little bit of that flow, but it's going a little too directional, so I'm going to break that up a bit. There we go. And let's get a little bit of detail with this nose texture. I really like this nose texture in here. Get some of that bumpy skin feel. I think it's going to play nicely. I'm going to do that on this side too. I like what that's doing. There we go. That's going to play nice. So feel free to use different parts of the skin to fill in areas, because there may be some flow lines and stuff that really work well. There we go. So the eyes are in a pretty good spot. Sorry, around the eyes are a pretty good spot. So let's move to the chin. Let's try to fill some of this in. Some really awesome stuff going on here. These lines. And all this kind of Langer line work is going to really feed into the tension and the age of this guy. It's going to read really well. So you just spend a little time doing this now. It's going to pay dividends in the end when we're doing our color maps. And I'm going to go to Ortho UV and make sure I fill in the rest of this chin here. Just gonna block this in. And block the rest of this in. So I constantly go back and forth between Ortho UV and 3D Ortho View just to fill stuff in. Don't really like where some of this directionality is going on the bottom of this chin, so I'm just going to try to find other pore detail that feels a bit more appropriate. Because again, we're not going to really see too much of this chin. It's not a huge focal point, so we just want to make sure we get no stretching, even coverage, and similar pore detail. Like so. Go back to Ortho UV. And block the rest of this in. There we go. And I'm really just using this neck section here because it's pretty generic pore detail, and it's kind of the type of texture I want for the neck. That kind of chicken, bumpy skin. So I'm not too terribly worried about flow lines or anything. I just want that feel for this neck. Like so. And going to the other side and doing the same thing. Although we're getting more of the cheek here, which is not really ideal. So I'm going to actually use a skin here because it's pretty non-directional, and finish it off. Like so. Sorry, I accidentally turned on the vector. Which I don't want. Sorry. Actually haven't really played with this vector stuff. There we go. So the neck is pretty good. So I'm going to end the recording here, and we're going to continue on to the ears and the back of the head and finish this guy up.